Hey guys, so today's video I'm going to show you how to make this DIY savings jar. So was the jar that I had before I would save all my money in, but then I decided I needed to save for something bigger like a world trip or something, so I went and I bought this jar at Michael's today. So basically what I'm basing this DIY project off of are those Tumblr jars you see where people will wrap maps around them or write little labels on what they're saving for. So I started by spreading out newspaper on my work surface, and I taped around the edges just so that it wouldn't move while I was working. So as I'm looking at this jar, I see that there are squares all around it. It's not round like the jar before I had, so I can't really wrap a whole map around it. So I'm looking, and I kind of like the idea of a picture frame because there's like this whole border on the outside of the square. So I decided to take this black chalk paint that I also found at Michael's, and I'm going to paint around the outside of those squares with a sponge brush. So I really do not trust myself to freehand this and make it look really nice, so I'm taping around the border of the square so I don't get paint in places I don't want. But I also didn't have any masking tape or painting tape, so I just used washi tape and it worked pretty well. I got all the tape on, I shook up my chalk paint so that it's not super runny when I'm ready to use it. And instead of pouring it out on like a paper plate or like a little paint cup or something, I just poured it into the cap. I mean, why make something dirty when you don't need to? So using my sponge brush, I just took some paint and started painting it on the jar where I wanted it.
And I miss you, and now I wonder if I could fall into.
And then once all the paint was put on the jar, looks really cool, you can see, just take off the washi tape. This paint dries really fast, so it doesn't really matter if the paint is wet or dry when you take off the tape. I know for some other projects it does matter. So here's the finished jar, well, I guess finished after the paint. So now I want to take my map and put it in the squares. But how I want to put it on the jar is using Mod Podge, and usually I use Mod Podge with something a little softer like tissue paper. So to make this paper a little more like tissue paper, I'm going to crumple it up a whole bunch of times, unroll it, crumple it up, unroll it, crumple it up, and that just kind of makes it softer and also kind of makes it look a little distressed, so it looks more like an old map instead of something brand new, which personally I really like the look of. So once you've unraveled it very carefully, you're going to want to spread it out. This paper is really fragile now, so be careful of tearing. Then I measured it on my jar with the little pencil, and I cut it out into the square that I wanted so it can fit on the jar.
And even when your hope is gone, move along, just to make it through, move along.
So once the paper's all cut out, you want to take your clean sponge brush. You don't want any black paint on it now, so make sure you clean it before you do this. Take your Mod Podge and put it on the back of your little map square. And you're also going to want to put some Mod Podge on the glass. It just helps it stick a lot better. If you had just put the Mod Podge on the paper and then put it on the glass, it would probably stick, but really not as well as it will if you put Mod Podge on the glass as well. So then just line up the map exactly where you want it, press down, flatten it, make it look kind of nice on the jar, just like I'm doing here. And then you're going to want to take your Mod Podge and go over the entire area, especially around the edges. So just use your brush. You can use your finger too to just kind of help make the edges stick. You're going to want to cover also the entire map just so it stays a lot better. So then for the front, I wanted to take a label kind of like they do in the Pinterest, the Tumblr jars. So I'm taking the scraps of the map that I had that I didn't use on my jar, and I'm tearing it into a piece so then it fits exactly how I want it. And I'm tearing this instead of cutting it just because I think it looks a little more, I don't know, homemade. So once you have the size you want, you can go ahead and write whatever title you want on it. I put For Emmy's Adventure on mine. I was going to say Adventures, but then I ran out of room. So the way I'm sticking this on, instead of Mod Podge, I'm going to use tape, just so then I can replace the title, fix the title, whatever I need, because then you can reuse the jar. So if it's not For Emmy's Adventures, you can just easily take off the title and put a whole new one on.
Staying up all night.
So then for the back square of the jar, I wanted to make kind of like a ruler or a thermometer kind of thing. So I'm just going to make little ticks on the piece of paper and write little things on the side. So you can't really measure exactly how much money is going to be in it. So you can't say like $100, $200, $300 like a regular ruler would. So I'm just writing little motivational sentence fragments.
What do you mean? Oh, when you nod your head yes, but you wanna say no. What do you mean?
So then once you've finished with that, you're going to want to take your Mod Podge once again, because I wanted to actually make this one stay. Take your Mod Podge, put it on the back of your paper, just like you did with the maps before. And here I remembered you need to put the Mod Podge on the glass. I cannot stress how important this is. It really does help it stay a lot better. So then cover the entire thing in Mod Podge again, and I'm using my finger around the edges because for some reason it didn't really want to stick. And then to go over the top, I'm using a stippling motion instead of a brushing motion because of the ink I used. I wasn't sure if it was permanent or not. I didn't know if it was going to smear or anything, so you just want to be careful about that. And then instead of having like a weird strip on the glass from just like one side of the little map piece, I'm going to put Mod Podge over the entire thing so it looks a lot nicer and more uniform. So there's the finished project. I hope you guys liked it. Here I'm just going to add my money from my other jar into my new big jar. I hope this inspired you guys to go ahead and make your own adventure jar or whatever else you want to save for.